I'm going live. The Hangout on Air is live. This is the Google Hangout of Google.
Thank you, Google.
Yeah. Keep you on your toes.
No, because all these people.
So now we're hearing somebody, but
now it's me, I think.
Tiffany's talking.
I already installed the.
Tiffany, should we mute you? Let's do that. I don't think she knows. Okay.
Hey, we can see Seth now. Sort of. Ooh.
He pops in and out.
Seth, you were just there for a minute. And he has no audio yet either? Oh, my Lord.
We're having fun now.
We're going to go to, let's go to Blab.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yay, we can hear you.
But now my camera's off. Now my camera's on. Camera's off. Wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax off.
Talk about WTF.
Wonderful.
I mean, this is unbelievable. I really think I want to switch this whole thing over to Zoom. I mean, we lose the whole social aspect, but I don't know if it even matters.
Yeah, I don't know how much you lose of the social aspect of it, Seth. I thought about that because I'm considering the same thing, moving to Zoom, just for these reasons. And plus, I have an additional reason, which those of us...
We can't speak about it on live TV or...
Unscheduled cameo appearances.
Oh, because of what happened?
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm seriously considering moving this whole thing to Zoom. It's funny because when Eric and I first started working together and we were talking about doing this hangout, if I remember correctly at that time, Eric was sort of the mindset that we should go somewhere else with it, and I said no, because with Google Plus you have the social thing, and I have all these followers, and I get to invite and spam them all with it, and
But you still get that because you'll be uploading to your YouTube. You just won't get the live, is what you won't get.
Yeah, but ultimately you want to grow an audience on this kind of thing. So, and there's a lot of people that I know watch it live but just don't sort of talk. So, I mean, I'll just have to make sure that everybody knows where to go to get into the Zoom one. My other concern, well, and Zoom I can't, the only ones who can see it live are those who are in the actual call, right?
Oh, got it.
So with Google Plus, I can have 100 people watching this right now. And so that's the other difference, and that's the problem. But when I can't even get my freaking camera to work, there it is for a second, but wrong camera,
Hey,
then it turns it off. Yeah, just for a second, though, and then it goes away.
Ugh.
Now, if I switch to this is my integrated camera, so that's working, but I don't want the integrated camera because the camera's terrible. Let me see if I switch over. Actually, can you guys see me? Because I can see myself.
Yes.
We can see you, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hold on, let's switch
it's
cameras.
not that bad. It's a little grainy, but...
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it just won't let me use my good camera.
It's better than the
now.
throbbing, the throbbing logo.
You love my throbbing logo, Joanne.
Yes, I know. The secret's out.
I have a suggestion. Why don't invites to the people that normally get the private invites in an email and then do the regular invites, like normal after.
Yeah, no, again, the main issue is that I won't be able to get more than, I don't know how many people Zoom can hold, I think maybe 25.
No,
and if people, and a lot of people, like I said, they want to watch. They don't want to necessarily be on the live panel, they just want to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So that opportunity, I cannot afford them to watch live. They'll have to watch it later. So
I would say, why don't you keep Google Hangouts, but send out the early invites via email or maybe Slack or something, so that, and then at 8 o'clock or whatever, open it up for people that the public that wants to join.
Well, that's what
but that would mean staying with Google Plus.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's if you didn't want to change to Google Plus, that'd be one way of people being able to get the invites. If people that wanted to speak, and you could and people that wanted to join could ask to get a private invite, via email.
Yeah, no, but again, that
Just-
doesn't solve the problem. What I'm trying to do is get out of Google Plus because of all the bugs. It's not going
Okay,
to solve
yeah.
that problem. So
Okay, I understand.
yeah, so I'd love to do it on Zoom, but and I was talking with somebody last week who said they had used Zoom on a video conference with, because my concern there was, what if you have more than, a few people? Because a lot of times these things, as they what do you call it? As you add more people on a video stream, it diminishes the quality because you're using up more bandwidth, right? So I was concerned that might be the
can we
case.
diminish more than where we're at?
Well, hold on, let me finish my point. So the issue was that I was concerned about was that the quality would be so bad after you had more than a few people, but from what I was told, the quality was still very good, even with more than like a handful of people in the call. So Zoom would be a great solution all the way around, but again, we lose the sort of direct plug-in that Google Plus offers to the social media world. So, and no, you can if you have a good camera and you have good light, you can get good quality here on Google Plus, but it's all you're dealing with a webcam, which the webcams need a lot of really good light in order to get a good rendering.
Yep.
So I have a question for Tiffany. She's using Zoom, and you like it? I'm presuming. You're saying you can hold up to 50 people. Someone said that there's a 45-minute limit for Zoom.
Yes.
On a free account.
On
yeah.
the free accounts, yeah.
Oh, okay. So if you purchase the $150 thing, you get as long as you want.
Right. So, and then Fred Stein is apparently watching, and he's saying, "What's wrong with WebEx?" Again, same problems you have with Zoom. I lose the social aspect of Google Plus. The benefit of doing it on Google Plus is that I have a direct plug into a social channel where it's easy to hook people in, to get them to come to the page, to post comments like we're doing now. And these like GoToMeeting and WebEx, those kinds of things, they have a chat, but it's not nearly as good, I don't think, as being able to go on a page like this and post in a stream the way we have here. And just the sort of potentially viral nature of what you can do when you're using a platform like Google Plus. And there is the added benefit of in terms of the fact that the recording goes directly to YouTube. It also plays live on YouTube. People could be watching live on YouTube right now and not even be on Google Plus. So
that can be a good thing, and that can be a bad thing, actually.
Why would it be a bad thing?
If somebody comes and busts into your live show.
Well, no, they can't do that on YouTube. On YouTube, all they can do is watch. The only way to join is to come over on, on Google Plus. Which, yeah, there is that possibility. It happened. I get it, but it happened once. And how long?
Yeah, but that once was way enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, but they give you the controls. You keep people out.
I need to see it one more time to be a judge on that
one. That's funny. So, they can't do that on YouTube. On YouTube, all they can do is watch. The only way to join is to come over.
We have someone listening to us, and this is
yes. Possibility. It happened.
Chris.
So yeah, but mind you, please, if you're joining us live, Chris, nothing personal. I muted you because there was a feedback coming in from your replay. So if you join live, don't make sure you're not playing the Hangout, because that creates some feedback. And then feel free to unmute yourself, when you're ready to speak. So let's get into the topic. I'm going to keep playing around with seeing if I can get my good camera to work.
Well, it is a good topic for today's Hangout because that's how we started. WTF.
WTF.
Exactly. So let's hear it. Let's Dennis. No, Alicia started all this trouble, so Alicia needs to go first. Alicia, unmute. I want to hear your stories first, or one story from you first.
I don't have any really good stories. That's why I was asking the question.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So, all right, so why don't you start us off then and recap the question for everyone.
So the question was, what was the craziest things that your clients asked to be deducted, and why, and what you actually had to do to convince them that it was not tax deductible? Right. And if you're going to SleaderCon, you'll understand why I asked the question back in May.
Now, interestingly enough, literally as recent as this morning, I received a request through one of my bookkeepers based on a client's request that we remove somebody from payroll for a couple of weeks and then put them back on because they're working off of a foreign visa. And apparently it's expired, and I guess while it's expired, they can't be on payroll, so they need to work that out and then get back on payroll, and they want to get paid cash. So my bookkeeper forwards the message from the client to me asking me what my thoughts are, and I just replied all and said, besides the fact that we're being asked to do something very illegal, and I said,
People are crazy. I just don't understand why they ask us those questions.
I almost want to say,
Just
you know what?
do it.
Don't ask me
Don't
these questions.
tell me.
I don't want to know. Because as soon as I know about it, you're
Right.
incriminating me. So just don't tell me.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
You want to sell cocaine and use your legitimate business as a money laundering facility, go ahead and do it, but don't tell me.
I'm going to stay on my porn subject.
I need plausible deniability.
Exactly.
So is the psychotherapy that we all have to go to because we witnessed that, is that tax deductible?
Well, you know, you might have a case against Google.
I may have a case against Google, absolutely.
So in my bookkeeping days, you know, people don't realize and don't value bookkeepers enough. We get to know amazing stuff about our clients that they really don't think about. So many times while I'm doing my bookkeeping, I have no clue what these guys are, you know, what is this? So I go to Google and I will Google search it. So, bam, porn comes up. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is draw. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just putting draw, and if they want to come and ask what that charge is for that draw, they got to come talk to me, and we'll have that conversation. Otherwise, I ain't saying nothing. I make it so they have to come to me.
And I told you the story in the Abo thread that ensued from Alicia's original question. I had a very similar experience but this time there was no opportunity to be discreet. It was we were there in the office. The bookkeeper, I was trying to clean up uncategorized transactions with their bookkeeper, and we found a charge. We couldn't figure out from the name what it was, and the owner was there, and we asked him. He's like, I have no ideas. So we Googled it, and it was porn, and this was his card. It was one of these deals where it's like a master account, and everybody has a card issued to them. So it was his card, and his face turned such a shade of red. It was like our logo for School of Bookkeeping. It was hysterical.
I was actually surprised. I was in a hotel a couple weeks ago, and they allowed you to buy porn on a separate charge than your room charge. I was like, that is the smartest thing they've ever done.
Oh yeah, no, hotels are great about that. They'll let you be very discreet so that when your boss gets the bill, all they know is, oh, you watched the movie,
or your
okay.
wife, whatever.
Yeah. Now, what I wonder is when last year at the Sleater conference, you know, it was at Caesar's Palace, and I noticed that they have these snacks and things that if you take off, you get charged to the room, and it's like $12 for a bag of M&Ms or something. And then one of the things that you could take from there was an intimacy kit. I want to know how that charge would appear on my bill.
INT. We can confuse it with lots of stuff.
Interest. Yes, boss. They charged me interest on my room fee because I didn't pay it until the last day.
Never mind that it's $150.
So who else? Dennis, you've seen some stuff in your day, I'm sure.
Actually, I took a different tack. I went on the internet and did some searching because I didn't finish my tax return until last tax return until about 8 o'clock last night.
My goodness.
My favorite one was the guy that had paid an arsonist to burn down his building, and he collected $500,000, but he got tripped up because he deducted a $1,000 consulting fee on his tax return, and the IRS investigated, and turns out it was just he ended up going to jail after they found that out. So I kind of enjoyed that.
Dennis, we're losing about half of every other sentence you're saying.
I said there was a guy that paid an arsonist to burn down his business and collected like $500,000, but then he got tripped up because
the fee the arsonist was booked as a consulting fee.
Right, yeah, $10,000 consulting fee, and then
That's awesome.
That's the best.
I found a employee was sending their Match.com charges to the business credit card.
That's using subscriptions, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, so here's my argument for that in tax court, though. Happy employees are productive employees, so we want people in happy relationships.
Well, that was an example of, let me call the owner and just say, I'm not sure what these charges are. You might want to look into them.
As long as it wasn't Ashley Madison.
yeah.
That one would be bad. Now, and then there's the, what's it called? Well, I love, being in Los Angeles, we have a lot of people in the entertainment industry, so they always want to deduct, like, their hair appointments and everything as professional maintenance, because, it's for a role, of course, every time they get their hair and makeup done. And then the gym memberships, they all want to deduct all that stuff, so it's a stretch. Right, but it's plausible, I think, that, hey, if I need to go to the gym and work out for a role. Now, what I want to know is if I have to gain weight for a role, right? So do I get to deduct all that food that I'm eating in order to gain weight for the role? Does that count? Can I deduct all those meals?
Charges afterwards to lose the weight because you don't really want it because it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be interesting to see if any of those type of things go through the tax courts. To see how that comes out.
Yeah, because then you got to pay the personal trainer to get back in shape. So that's another cost, right?
We should throw up a couple of petitions.
Well, I want to be able to deduct my doggy's charges. My doggy is a integral part of my office. My dog keeps me happy, makes me take him for walks, keeps me healthy. I think he's a very valuable member of my team.
Well, actually, if you have a dog that lives strictly on the premises, I believe you can deduct it as a security expense for security.
Yeah, Cosmo security.
Yeah, my dog's about 10 pounds too, Joanne.
Yeah, there are rules. The dog has to be on the premises like 24/7. They have to really live, in the office space.
It's emotional sense.
Patrice wants to know, what about a cat?
Yeah.
I don't know if cats would go over as security.
Mouse maintenance. That's
There was a tax court case a few years ago where this guy had a junkyard and there were like snakes and all this kind of stuff, and so he put out cat food for the cats, and the cats caught the snakes, and he was able to deduct the cat food as a business expense.
Yeah.
After he went to tax court.
That's funny. Robin Smithson is watching. She says she got a good one this week. She says this client wrote a check to an unknown vendor. I asked what it was for. She said it was a client they were trying to get, so they bought her a used piano, and they want to take half of it as a marketing expense. So you buy the client's piano to get them as a client.
It's a promotion.
Well, funny enough,
it's a little stretch.
There's a lot of stuff that I do book as promotional. In terms of when, like, you buy gifts for employees and that sort of thing, or even gifts for clients, I always call that promotional because to me it is a way of promoting the business, even from within. When you're trying to create a good environment, a good working environment, by buying, having a party or whatever you're doing and buying extra stuff, office decor, I like to call that stuff promotional. I don't like to use the word gifts in my chart of accounts, so I call that promotional.
Got it.
I'll admit some of it's a stretch, though.
I have something that I kind of do. It's basically like a very common thing that I know a ton of clients do, but I don't personally. I don't allow my clients to do it, and that is when I start looking at their accounts and their transactions, and I see like a crap ton of charges to like Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King, Arby's, and they're writing it off as like meals and entertainment. And I said, if you are that lazy that you cannot pack yourself a lunch, I am not giving you that deduction. So unless you can prove to me that there was a business meeting, I want to know who you wined and dined at Burger King. Who did you share that Arby's beef and cheddar with, and that you have to deal with? If you can prove that to me, we'll take it as a deduction. Otherwise, hit the road. I don't let them do it. Nope, no sir.
I do. I deduct Starbucks if I'm getting coffee on my way to a client. I know that's stretching it.
Yeah, that's true. I wouldn't let him do that, Seth. I wouldn't let you do that.
I figure it's such a minimal charge. You
I'd
want
say-
to send
I'd say you
somebody
have to tell
to
me your
audit my
money.
books over that $5 coffee?
Tell me you documented that Starbucks that you met somebody there and had a quick meeting before you went to see your client.
It's always about the clients.
There
We
you
used
go.
to deduct a
I
lot of
never leave
alcohol.
the house if it's not
Yeah,
about
a lot of
client.
alcohol. I
We
like
used to deduct a lot of alcohol. You invite at least one client every night.
Yeah.
Let's see. Fred says, I've had a client that had some anxiety issues, and she went to the IRS with arguments that her animals were required to calm her. And this is becoming more and more popular, by the way, to have like a service dog,
Yeah.
right, where you can take those dogs into public places now where otherwise pets are not allowed because it's a service dog. But it's almost becoming like medical marijuana, where I can say I stubbed my toe and I'm stressed out now, and now I can get the papers that I need.
I wanna be able. I'm actually considering taking Cosmo to California with me for QVC. I don't know.
That would be awesome. I want to take Ralphie with me. He's small enough I could stick him in my suitcase.
I know Cosmo literally he's like 6 pounds. I could sneak him in just about anywhere.
We need a dog for SleaterCon.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Well, now it's at the Bellagio this year. Sleater.
And they don't allow dogs?
I don't think so. I have a
We
feeling
should-
not.
Yeah, we should all come with our dogs.
But, you know, every Marriott Residence Inn allows pets.
Yep.
So wherever you go, you can find a Residence Inn, and you can bring them. You have to pay, like, you know, extra for them. But you can do, and it's 2 dogs per room. So, like, if you're like me and you have 3 dogs, then you have to get an extra room.
Or you
The
just
dog-
hide one.
Yeah, you just hide one and hope he doesn't bark while you're checking in.
Just hide Ralphie.
So what else we got?
I was reading this one article and it said that the CPA was telling me a client came to him and he wanted to take a deduction for his contributions to a sperm bank, and the accountant said, and the client said, well, isn't there some sort of depletion allowance? And the CPA said, well, I think you have to be an oil well to do that.
That's
And
great.
then there was another one I read up on that this one man tried to deduct a mink coat for his wife, claiming that as a business expense, claiming that it was sort of a conversation starter when he met with clients. And these are kind of under the list of failed deductions.
Well, the one that as I understand it, and we learned about this when I was taking tax classes in college, was I think it was a famous tax court case where a stripper actually wanted to be able to capitalize and depreciate the cost of her implants. And I believe it went all the way up to federal tax court, and I believe she actually won the case that this was in fact able to be defined as an asset that was used directly in the production of revenue.
Right, I was reading up on this. Her name was Chesty Love. She was a stripper, and she increased her breast size to a 56 FF. And
Oh my goodness.
unfortunately,
Size. Go
and
ahead.
so one of it was accepted, and I guess one of her bodacious tatas ruptured, and so she had to had them removed, and she was able to deduct that as a medical expense too. She got it coming and going, so.
Wow.
Side note: Dennis is now following her on Twitter.
And then she had to write the asset off of her balance sheet, right?
I guess,
right.
or maybe.
So then
Yeah.
she had to figure out the basis and determine what the loss was.
Yeah, figure out the depreciation and the whole bit,
That's hysterical. And then can you use Section 179 on that?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Or do they call it section? Maybe it's Section 69.
Oh.
Ba-dum-bum.
I'll be here all day. Let's see. If you're buying food for employees as a de minimis fringe benefit, example, donuts, coffee, etc., or food in-house so they can work through lunch, it's 100% deductible as are company parties. That's correct. So a lot of times on the books, and that's from Diane Gilson, by the way, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll have 2 meals categories, one for out of the office, one for the in the office deduction. So
100%.
when I buy Starbucks, I'm bringing it to the office to be consumed there in the office, so it's 100% deductible.
Yeah, I know when I
I
worked
would
for
love
I worked for a company one time, and they used to call that they called it employee relations. You know, the buying food and parties and that kind of stuff for their employees for the morale. So
I know a lot of companies that do that. I've been to companies that bought lunch for their multitude of employees every single day.
Mhm.
Oh, when I worked for the Veterinary Centers of America, they were stocked, but there was a fridge filled with, I could grab soda and chips and chocolate bars all day long.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Exactly.
kept us loaded up on sugar. I guess that was their way of trying to keep us pumped up to work.
Well, there was a Keurig there with every kind of coffee that you could imagine.
Yeah.
Keep them pumped up with coffee.
So, and I still want to be able to deduct my dogs as dependents. My dogs probably cost me more than most people's kids do in a year.
well, that's why they have to get social numbers when kids are born, because I guess people were doing that.
Giving their
Yep,
dogs
so-
social numbers?
No, but they didn't have to have social numbers way back when they were deducting, kids.
Oh, okay.
So now they have to get social. It used to be you got your social security number when you were 16, at least back when.
Back in the
when I got
Really?
mine. Yeah, when I was,
Back in
I didn't get mine till I was like 16.
Back in the
And-
day.
Yeah, back in the day, right?
I thought you got it when you were born. Really? I don't know when I got mine.
No, yeah, that was a long time ago where you could wait till you're 16 to get it.
I've never even seen my own Social Security card. At some point, my father just told me, "Here's your Social Security number. Don't lose it."
Yeah.
So Fred says, I also won an audit where a client built a $100,000 plus inside pool for medical purposes. It was an audacious pool room, but we won. That's great.
Nice. So Patricia says she has a client who loves to shop at Nordstrom's, Bloomingdale's, J. Crew, and writes them off to client gifts.
Yeah.
I've written them off to trade show clothing.
Uh-huh.
She sells
The problem is,
tailored
as Diane
solutions
points out,
and does have
the-
some trade shows.
You have to
Yeah.
ask for a uniform.
The problem is, as Diane points out, the gift is limited to $25. So I have a feeling she can deduct $25 of each of those items.
Yeah, I
And
have a
Diane
client-
agrees with me on the pet cost. Just paid $4K on a dog's knee surgery. That's right. I've had to pay for surgeries for all 3 dogs for stones to be removed. So that's costing me in the neighborhood of $6,000 all told.
So why are you feeding them stones?
I'm trying to get them to stop. I'm trying to wean them off of it. 5 million children disappeared that year. I lost the context on that one, Fred. You'll have to explain. So what else we got? What other crazy tax deductions? I'm going to click over on the thread because there were some great stories in there.
Well, I put one on the thread. I could tell you guys about the lawn maintenance guy. He's got his shirts that, of course, are emblazoned with the business logo, so those go under promotion or uniforms. But he wanted to deduct his pants and his shoes and almost his underwear, I would think, because he had to wear all that to go to work, of course, as well. So, and it wasn't anything specific for the job. It was all stuff you could wear anywhere. So I know that's that means it's not a deductible clothing expense.
I had a client. I had a client that got in trouble with the state one time because he did that. They were like supposedly 1099 contractors, and they were wearing his shirts and caps with logos on it. And the state L&I department had out doing inspections and said, "Well, geez, I think you guys are employees, not contractors, since you're doing all this,
Yeah, that would be a
His
check
logo.
mark in the employee column for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at the thread now, and now I'm being reminded about, of course, how quickly this all went straight into the gutter. I'm not going to mention names because, if they're not in here actually commenting live. But one person mentions that I guess she got a receipt for condoms that a client submitted, and she said it was a cash receipt, so she just ignored that one after the table. Then we have porn site subscriptions. Now, can I pay for a porn site subscription for my client as a gift? I guess if it's less than $25 a year.
Well, I was reading this one article about this retired lawyer, William G. Haley, that attempted to claim $113,000 worth of therapeutic cess, massage therapy, and pornography in lieu of Viagra on his 2002 tax return. Said he'd was being treated for sexual dysfunction and he tried to pass it off his medical.
Oh, Dennis,
And of course,
Yeah,
on us
allowed
again.
it.
pass it off as what? I guess we're not going to get that.
I said that this attorney tried to deduct $113,000 for massage therapy, therapeutic sex, and pornography in lieu of Viagra. He tried to pass it off as a medical expense to the tax court, and of course it was disallowed.
So here we have another one from the thread. The customer had a customer say they had a dozen personal credit cards. They mixed business and personal stuff. She'd recently had a baby and wanted to deduct the baby furniture. She had a huge family of 7 kids. She also tried to deduct her groceries, liquor store, vapor store as supplies, her clothing purchases as uniforms, and their family vacations as travel expense.
That's a person looking to get audited. You know, they can take any kind of deduction they want. It's not really us that they need to convince. It's the IRS when they come knocking on the door for the audit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right, but the tax prep professional has a certain amount of responsibility to do some due diligence before they sign off on that return. Like,
yeah,
as the bookkeeping or accounting person who compiled the books, I can put whatever I want in there. I've even told clients, look, if your CPA wants to sign off on this when they file the return, God bless them. You know, but I'll warn them that my understanding often is can't do it.
Yeah, but the big thing is, especially at least in this area that I can speak to, is that I know that there's a lot of the tax professionals that truly use the engagement letter as the cover their ass letter, because the verbiage of an engagement letter says we are just compiling your return based upon the figures that you give us, and that pretty much protects a lot of what the tax professional is responsible for. For me personally, I obviously make sure that that's why I have a very small tax practice and a very focused tax practice, because I won't take on people that go outside of what I feel comfortable actually signing the return. And I can tell you a ton of CPAs that just look at the numbers and say, repairs, okay, sure, I'll deduct that without even looking to see what's in there.
I could say there is a difference, though. There's in Circular 230, which is the ethics rules for the tax preparers. I can't remember exactly what it says, but there is a line in there that you have a responsibility if you're signing that tax return to know if something doesn't pass the smell test, or you have information that doesn't jibe with what they're telling you. You have to do some diligence on that.
Yeah.
So there's a line there if they don't tell you, or if you have some knowledge, or you just kind of try not to look at it at all. I don't know.
But you can tell it's a huge gray area. It's a huge, absolutely. That circular obviously always puts that thing in there. But the point is that it's an easy, there are easy outs for the taxpayers can say, oh well, I looked at this and it looked reasonable for last year. If somebody had $1,500 in one account last year and this year, and we did a reasonableness test, but oh, by the way, it was a washer and dryer, and they have no reason to have they have a washer and dryer for the house, and you didn't look for receipts. So that's why, for me personally, I make sure I look at pretty much just about everything that comes across my desk, because I won't sign the return. But there are a lot of tax professionals that will just say, give me your income statement, let me sign the return.
And the worst thing is that the taxpayers often don't realize that, like, they're still on the hook, even though their tax preparer said fine. If they're not, if they're a little shady, then they're not going to get in. Well, they might get in trouble, but not as much as the taxpayer.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Ideally, you'd get the QuickBooks file. I was doing a return yesterday where it's a daycare, and it was a god-awful mess because they were combining both personal and business in one QuickBooks file, and so I had to kind of extract the business. Anyway, there was one line item for like $10,000 repair, so I got the QuickBooks file and drilled down. It was like a $5,000 for bathroom plumbing, so I moved that out. But the rest of it looked fairly reasonable. I mean, they're really small amounts, so I could see where daycare you'd have, a home daycare, you might have those kind of expenses. But I made sure to get the $5,000 out of there.
Well, the other thing too is that you have to keep in mind is that I would say hopefully most tax professionals, if not all tax professionals, have professional liability insurance. So, if something does come to fruition and they do have to, they are penalized or whatever, that's what they have insurance for. Unfortunately, the taxpayer, not the case.
Yep.
So here's a question: what about these things? Most of us
More
use them in our
and more.
business,
Yes, especially if you have like T-sheets.
Hmm.
right? I mean, I would argue that I use this almost exclusively for business,
Yeah.
but there's some amount of personal, right? So how do you prorate that? Do you do it
I,
based
I
on
think they
personal?
gave up on that. I thought
Yeah,
I talked
I
to
don't.
I saw an IRS agent that said that they have pretty much just given up on that because you really cannot separate business from personal use on your phone.
Yeah, it's very hard for them to do that, and especially now with the way the phones are, is that like for my phone, I use it as a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Right. Me too.
So I need to have the data, I need to have it available to me, I need to be able to be in contact with my employees, and be able to communicate with my clients via email and stuff like that. Like I can't tell you hardly the personal use that I use my phone for, actually.
I usually do like maybe an 80-20 or a 90-10, depending on how much they use their phone in the business. I try to make a guesstimate as to what I think would be reasonable. Because I look at myself, I think I use mine probably about 8% for business, maybe 90%, maybe 10% for personal. So I just try to do something to be be what I think is reasonable. But
Yeah, if
I
the
don't think
IRS
it's
looks
10.
at that, they might say, "Hey, you're making an effort to be fair." So
Yeah.
Yeah, but honestly, there have been I know that about 2 years ago I had I went through 3 audits. It was 3 years ago. I went through 3 audits over the summer, and they were kind of picking through a Schedule C. They were picking through a rental property thing, and they went through and they saw all that stuff. It had cell phone use. It had all the stuff. They didn't even care about that. They were happy that I had put together this mileage log for them that corresponded with the guy's. He actually had a pretty good mileage log. They were happy. They were just like flipping through, yep, and they just took that 1 year and they said, well, we're going to assume you guys did the same accounting for the next 2 years, because it was a 3-year audit, and they went and they were fine. They were fine with just about everything except for one thing the guy did wrong, and it wasn't my fault, but he forgot to tell me. He forgot to tell me that he gets reimbursed by his employer for mileage. It was like a small amount, like 10 cents a mile.
Okay.
So they added back 10 cents a mile as income, and that was it. But the funny part about it is that we found additional repair receipts on the rental property that offset it, so they ended up getting a refund. So over the 3 years, they had a refund of $200, and they paid me $2,700 to do all the work.
So what about Apple Watches? Are we going to be deducting those?
I refuse to deduct any Apple products. No, just kidding.
is it necessary? I guess that's the question. One side of the question for taxes: is it is reasonable and necessary?
Right, exactly.
Well, same as this thing. I'm sure people are going to argue that they use it the same way they use this thing. It's just this, but on their wrist, right? So
But you got to have the phone too. So I don't know. It's kind of like an add-on. I don't know. I'm less sure on the watch.
Yeah.
What about the accessories? I mean, the Bluetooth headsets and those kinds of things.
Yeah,
right?
I would say that if you can prove, I mean, for example, Seth, for you could say, well, I have to review it and I have to know it so that I can help my clients with it.
Absolutely.
Right? You have to keep up with technology, and same thing with learning the different tablets and the different iPads and what applications and what software works good and what's going to make sense and be the most efficient for your clients.
I think it depends on the industry too. I mean, like I could see a real estate broker might have up to like 90-95% of their cell phone for business, as opposed to someone that's in a retail store or owns a retail shop. I don't know that
So what do you do?
Health and wellness. Use it like a Fitbit.
Yeah. So what do you do if you use your phone to log in the morning and then log in when you go home? You've got 8 hours of use there, but you're also calling your boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse during the day. Hey, we need milk and eggs. I mean, how do you separate that?
You know what? My wife and my parents are always giving me business advice.
But you're logged in. I mean, you need it, and you are logged in for that 8-hour period of time.
Yeah, I don't even bother splitting it out.
I'm with you on that.
One of my favorite deductions that I've seen over the years, and I've seen this a number of times, surprisingly enough, is I'll be going through the books, and I will see, when I drill into I'll see a large number, and when I drill in, it's usually very large payments, and it's all under one expense category called credit card expense.
Oh, I love that one.
I love that, yeah.
That's a good one.
Like, oh, sure. You don't need to know what you actually charged on the card. Just look at all the credit card expense. No problem. That'll hold up.
Well, what I see on some of my clients' returns is they are expensing their tax payments to the IRS.
Oh, absolutely.
Or this one guy was taking like member draws and he was expensing it, and so he had way understating his income. So I had to go add it back and tell his bookkeepers to make the corrections. It's kind of really amazing what some bookkeepers are doing in terms of how they're categorizing this stuff, because a lot of times it's not the client, it's the $35 an hour bookkeeper, $25 an hour bookkeeper.
Well, that's what happens. They don't have the accounting knowledge or skills, and they're not really given the information from the client, because the client is depending on the bookkeeper to know what to do, and it's kind of a circular problem.
I'd argue it's the bookkeeper's responsibility to find out. Like, all of us need to have somebody we can defer to for guidance when we have questions about things. I do. I have a CPA that's like a father to me out here in Century City, California, and anytime I have any questions about accounting-related stuff, he's my first call. In fact, I'd argue that I've learned practically everything I know when it comes to all this kind of the accounting and tax stuff. I've learned from him directly and from just asking him questions if I'm not sure. And it's funny because speaking of audits, he had we share a lot of clients, of course, and one of these guys was a buddy of mine. He wasn't actually my client, but he went to the same guy for his taxes, and he just got randomly selected for an audit. And this guy, the CPA, his name's Barry. Barry actually, did the audit, and Barry has a lot of experience. He's worked for many years, and he's explained to me that the IRS, almost like the FBI, they have offices everywhere, so you have the same agents who are doing the audits, in your area. So over the years, he's gotten to know them, and like anything else, it's a business relationship. You get to know them, you work with them, you learn to cooperate with them, and so what he often does, and what I know he did in this case, was they had some things that they knew the IRS was going to ding him on. One of the things was he didn't keep mileage logs. So, of course, he went back through Google Maps, and he did keep a very good calendar of who he went to see on every day. I mean, that's how he had his appointments set up. So he reconstructed. He said it took him 40 hours to reconstruct his mileage log for a whole year based on his calendar and just doing Google Maps from his house to their place and back or whatever it was. And there was a couple of other things that they nailed him on, but I guess what Barry had done was Barry held on to a few deductions that he could have taken but didn't, and that was kind of like his ace in the deck, so that when the IRS auditor came and said, well, we're going to kick out these expenses, and Barry then came in and said, well, there's these other deductions that we didn't take that are allowable, and it ends up being a wash. So, at the end of the day, it's let's face it, it's all kind of a game, that you have to play. And, at the end of the day, the nice thing was, because he came out with a clean audit record, because that was really the game they were trying to play, is we don't want it on record that we had to show an adjustment if we can avoid it. So it was a negotiation. Look, you can kick this out, but then we have this other thing. Let's just leave them both out, right? Because I guess the idea is that way you walk away with a clean audit, and then the IRS tends to leave you alone for at least a little while after that, because it's almost like, all right, we audited, we didn't come up with anything, we trust them, and also they don't want to spend the money on an audit unless they know there's a good chance they're going to get something back for it. There's a cost that they incur with respect to performing that audit, and that is a consideration.
Well, my experience with audits, I've got one. It's a desk audit that's supposed to be really, go fast. And I met with the auditor back in June, and it was supposed to be like a week and she'd get back to me. Well, 3 months later, I haven't heard back from her. I left voicemails and emails. So finally, what I did, I knew this other auditor. I called him, got the other auditor's boss's name, called her, got the admin, called her, and she was able to flag down the auditor. And I mean, I had to track her down, and she told me that she had like about 70 other files she was working on, and so others had higher priority. And so finally, I did get something from her. I kind of wish I hadn't, because I have to get it done in the next week or so. But I had to actually track her down. I may, if I hadn't done anything, I still might have not heard from her, because. And then I had another auditor that's worked on it for about a year and a half and then left, and now we're starting with another auditor. So they are so understaffed, it's not even funny, you know.
Right.
So
but and going back to the bookkeeper, sorry. Sorry, there's a delay. I thought you were done.
No, I'm done.
I was just going to say, going back to the bookkeeper discussion, I think it's the bookkeeper's responsibility to find out or make sure that they have the right resources in place to ask and get questions answered about how it's appropriate to book things. You know, at a certain point, they've got to have some kind of a resource that they can. I mean, that's why I love the ABBO group, because people can come there and ask those kinds of questions, and people are only too happy to answer. But I think it ultimately, you know, it's like, you know, I recently dealt with a case where somebody was being nailed on a copyright issue where they used a licensed image on a website. And, you know, at the end of the day, it was like saying I didn't know better is not an acceptable excuse. You know, you have to, if you're going to go out there and provide bookkeeping services, then I think you have a certain responsibility to make sure that you know better in terms of what can and can't be deducted and what should be categorized somewhere and what shouldn't. I mean, I get that there's going to be more complex situations where it won't be as clear, but even there, I think it's incumbent upon the bookkeeper to make sure that they have somebody they can defer to, you know, a CPA or an enrolled agent who understands taxes, that they can go to and say, hey, is this okay? Can I deduct this? You know, how does this work?
The only argument to that point, though, is one, as a bookkeeper, you probably are never going to be that educated unless you find those resources. So when you're starting out, it's very difficult. But I think if you don't know, you need to make sure that it's evident that you don't know the answer to the question.
Well, the problem is a lot of
bookkeepers make a mistake is that they will put something as an asset when they really don't know if it should go there in the first place. But if you flag it so that the CPA will actually pick it up as something that they need to review, then you're doing the right thing.
The problem is a lot of bookkeepers know QuickBooks, but they don't know the underlying concept of bookkeeping.
Right.
Or they don't know the results of what they're doing.
Right.
They don't know the consequences of what they're doing.
And that's why, that's why in the future it's going to require a higher level of knowledge, because there's going to be less and less data entry, and you're going to have to kind of understand the consequences of what you're doing in terms of how it impacts the financials. And usually,
I think there's an element of pride that comes into play here too, where they don't want to admit to the client that they don't know.
Well, usually if the balance sheet is out of whack, then it tells you something's wrong with the income statement, and
they have no idea that the balance sheet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well, they have data entry for accounting knowledge.
Yeah.
I had a bookkeeper working with me for about a minute who, the crazy thing was, this guy had his college degree was from, I forget, it was either Harvard or Yale. I mean, really intelligent guy, but even there his field of study wasn't accounting. But somehow he got in with the company as a controller at some point, worked his way up to that stage. That company went out of business. Should have been a red
surprise.
But he came to me and he seemed very much overqualified to be doing bookkeeping, so I was only too happy to have him. And then he starts submitting books that I'm reviewing, and I'm seeing, you know, like negative numbers on the balance sheet where there shouldn't be negative numbers. And so I was sort of nailing him on this and saying, hey, you got to go back and fix that. Something's wrong with that account. You know, go back, research it, whatever. And, you know, I can't submit a balance sheet to a client that has negative numbers in accounts that shouldn't have negative numbers. The only place I should see a negative number is accumulated depreciation. So, you know, ultimately he walked away, and I'll never forget the comment he made. He referred to I'm trying to remember the exact words. I'll paraphrase though. It was something like, you know, that he couldn't deal with working with my impossible bookkeeping service because I was asking him to state the financial statements properly, and this was an ex-controller.
Wow. Well, you know, there's a few things that, with one client of mine particularly, this is kind of a funny story, is he was at a point where he was losing his in-house assistant / bookkeeper, who actually did a pretty decent job, but I knew how to fix things and whatnot. There was a lot of stuff that they didn't do that I would do at the end of the year, and I kept on trying to get him to move to a monthly so that we could get things updated and stuff, and I gave him a quote, and my son Jesse, who works for me and does bookkeeping, he's got a bachelor's in accounting, and he's been working in QuickBooks in 2 years. I gave him, Jesse would be solely working on his stuff, and so long story short, you never hear back from him, but now I get a phone call from this new bookkeeper of his that he's outsourced. And so I looked up all of her information. She has like nothing on her online profiles that says she knows anything about accounting, first of all. Second of all, she actually submits the stuff to me, and I see how much he's paying her, which is ridiculous, and she does not know how to do bookkeeping. Like, she doesn't even know how to do QuickBooks right. She's making journal entries for credit card transactions.
No.
It's like a big, huge mess. And so it took me, I think, longer this year to clean up his mess than last year, and I was just really frustrated with him, and I ended up ending this tax season, sending him a little cease and desist. You're no longer a client.
Cease and desist.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean. I just put him a bye Felicia letter.
Uncle, I can't take anymore.
I sent him a bye Felicia letter. Bye Felicia. Move on. I just could, because for him to actually go through all the painstaking process of finding somebody to take over his accounting and just totally go downhill, paying 3 times as much as he was paying his other person, and she just doesn't know it. She just does not know basic concepts. I mean, she was deducting his mortgage payment.
Oh yeah.
His home mortgage payment, he was deducting it as an expense.
That's awesome. Did you see what Gabriel posted in ABBA yesterday? I guess a client he was getting ready to fire came into his office and walked away, and I said, and he was like, perfect. You saved me the trouble of having to fire the client. And I said, you should send him a thank you card.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for leaving me.
Well, it does bring a point. It brings a good point. If you are going to be a trusted advisor to your client has to be trusted too.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that they're trying to get deductions that they're not supposed to be taking, or they're omitting information from you, this is a good reason to say adios also.
Well, for me, what broke the camel's back in this situation wasn't necessarily the whole bookkeeper issue. It was the fact that he went the whole entire year and did not pull a salary and took $170,000 worth of draw, or worth of a dividend distribution, because he's an S corp, and and his tax liability was $25K between federal and New York State, and he was just like, "Are you crazy?" And I'm like, "You haven't paid anything in all year. What do you want me to do?"
Right.
Diane makes the point from earlier when we were talking about clients trying to take frankly unethical deductions.
Yep.
She says, "Do you really want to associate with people like that?" And
No.
the answer is no. In fact, I don't even want to deal with clients who are trying to nickel and dime for every stupid little deduction they can get. I'd much rather deal with a client who wants to do everything on the up and up, and who's much more interested in the strategic guidance I can give them for how to legitimately grow your business, take advantage of deductions, look where we can cut back on costs, see where we can exploit opportunities. That's the client I want. I want the client who wants to really get serious about running their business rather than trying to figure out ways to finagle extra deductions in. I mean, to me, that's a bottom feeder who's just trying to scrape by. I don't want to scrape by. I want to do really well. That's what it comes down to for me.
Yep, exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's why I said in the beginning of the Hangout, that's why I talked about my little conversations that I always have to people when they go to Burger King. I'm like, it's not necessary. It's keep it on the up and up. I mean, if you really have a meeting, that's fine, but otherwise,
suck it up.
Well, and the thing is too is that a lot of people don't realize, and of course this is kind of like, it goes like you're giving them like life lessons and stuff, is that there's 2 ways to make more cash flow, right? There's to sell more and to spend less. So if you stop wasting your money on going through the drive-thrus, you're going to have more money.
I mean, there's so much sort of guidance we can give people along these lines. I mean, then there's also the I mean, there's a whole argument for also, you might think that you're saving money by buying cheap fast food now, but think of what you're going to spend later in health costs.
Exactly.
By
That's the
being
same for
healthy.
QuickBooks. If you're going to be cheap now and get that $35 bookkeeper, you're going to spend much more later on cleaning it up on health costs.
Right. Yep. So, there's a lot to be said for that, and it comes at one point. And it was interesting because we had a thread in ABBA recently where people were talking about. I actually posed the question, what is your average client's average annual revenue, right? And I didn't care what industry or any of that. I was actually I was doing some research for Fundera, trying to see what the average loan might fund for based on an assumption about a percentage of revenue that typically people are able to fund for in small business loans. And it was interesting what ensued in that thread because people were talking about their average revenue per client. And I think it was Billy Ann Grigg actually who said that she specifically looks for the clients that have low revenues because she likes helping those people, which is awesome. But what I found in my own experience was that when at a certain point, I actually did the opposite. I said, I don't want to deal with a client who's doing less than $1 million a year in revenue. And the reason for that was that I found that companies that were sort of at that level in terms of revenue had a whole different mindset about how they want to run their business. I was no longer dealing with clients trying to nickel and dime me on my billing. They didn't care. They just paid my bill because they were just serious about what I was able to do for them. And it wasn't about, hey, can I save $100 on your bill here? I mean, I'll never forget walking into a new client's office one day. This was years ago. And the woman who ran the company was on the phone. She invited me in and then motioned for me to sit down because she was on the phone with somebody. And as I'm listening to the phone conversation, it's apparent she's on the phone with T-Mobile bargaining for a credit on her bill, which at the end of the call, which I think I sat there for a good 30 minutes, she got a $15 credit on her T-Mobile bill for that month. And I sat there thinking, what is the value of this CEO's time? It's got to be worth at least $150 an hour, but she spent a half an hour saving $15. It makes no sense, and I don't want to deal with people who are in that mindset where they're going to try and nickel and dime stuff when I'd rather be thinking, like I had the argument with my father once, and he said, oh, you should spend time shopping around and save a little money. I forget what it was I was buying, but he was criticizing me for not doing that when I was when I was buying something, and I said, Dad, the value of my time based on what I bill out, if I do bill out hourly, and this was at that time, I said, is $185. So unless I can save more than $185 while spending an hour trying to research, getting a bargain price, it isn't worth it. And then he got that. And I don't understand that mindset where you're going to spend all this time nickel and diming for every little credit, every little savings, when in the bigger picture I could spend that time just billing another $185 or now $250 an hour out so that I can make more money instead of worrying about, and yes, you should always look to cut back on costs, but I think you always have to think about what are you going to save against what is it costing you to spend the time you're spending saving that. You know what I mean?
Plus, you never get your time back either.
Yep. That's my justification for having a maid.
I like it. I do want to say that I value my books. When I'm doing my bookkeeping, I use my information and I value that. If I don't get that same kind of feeling from my client, if they don't value their books or are willing to put that info or that time and money into their business, like Seth says, it's not necessarily how much do you make for me, it's how much do you care about getting it right. How much do you value what I'm doing?
Yep. And if a client, one of the ways I've started to vet clients over the years is that I'll kind of try and get it, if their only purpose is, the only reason they're hiring me is to get a tax return done, I tell them I'm not your solution. I charge way too much for somebody who wants to put a set of books together when that's the only thing they're using it for. I'm the strategic advisor. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to analyze the numbers with you, and I'm going to look at the big picture and see how we can grow your business by using the numbers and what information those numbers provide us in terms of trying to figure out how to expand and grow. I'm the guy that's going to look at what's happening in markets. I mean, this is something I've been talking about a lot lately, and I've written a lot of content on it recently, which is going to be getting published in several different places. But, you know, where you take, for example, my jewelry designer client that I had some years ago, and at the time that I was working with them, the price of silver was fluctuating like crazy, and most of their jewelry was made with silver. And so at a certain point I said, hey, you know what? We need to be paying attention to this because it's affecting your cost of goods sold. So when the price is up, if we have some extra cash, let's go out and buy some short option contracts on silver commodities because we know the silver market because we're living in it.
Be like, we'll quit when we graduate. Best friends forever. We're so bae. Bae.
What was that?
Patrice, what was... It sounded like it said friends with Abbo.
Yeah.
Well, at least it wasn't visual.
But in any event, you know, the point I'm getting at is I want a client who can appreciate that strategic guidance that I can give them, way above and beyond just putting a balance sheet and a P&L together. It's what you do with it after that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Plus, what does that say about clients that don't seem to make a priority of returning your calls or getting you information when you need it? I've got a couple
well,
of clients
that's another
like
thing.
that.
That conversation comes up a lot in Abbo, and I'm actually surprised at how much people get bogged down, it seems, by clients who don't give them what they need. I make 3 efforts to get what I need. If the client doesn't give me what I need after 3 attempts, I'm done. I'm moving on. I'm going to go focus on the clients who are willing to take the time to focus on me and get me what I need to do the job.
3 strikes and you're out.
You have to document it, though. Make sure that you can get those attempts to contact them because they'll say, oh, I never got that email, or I didn't get that call, or, you know.
They can say that all day long. I had a client call me just last week claiming just such a thing. Oh, I always follow up on your responses. And I said, nope, I've got an email here that I sent you in April updating you on where things were at. And I never got a response from you, never heard from you again until September. And now, of course, he's trying to get us to, you know, slam dunk it all in because he's got to get his personal returns done today. So I just basically said, nope, you're not putting that on me. And he actually acknowledged. He says, oh, yeah, I see that email. I got the email, but I didn't realize it needed a response. And I'm like, well, you know, between that and several other attempts to reach you to get what we needed, you know, and not getting anything back, I moved on. I'm not going to babysit people. And they can tell me, oh, I never got the email, and I'm going to say, well, 1 email I would get that you didn't get, but 3, you know, come on.
I hate nagging. I hate nagging people. I don't want to be their dad. You know, it's like.
Yeah, I mean, worst comes to worst, if for some reason I really feel compelled to want to follow through with them, and then I got to go in a minute because I'm late for a call. But what I'll do is I'll put it in Smartsheet and put it on an auto reminder, and just have Smartsheet go out and send them the reminder every day. This is what I need, and I'll then just kind of annoy them into getting me what I need. In some cases, the clients require a little bit of extra hand-holding, and if they're paying me well, I'll do it. That's what it really comes down to, quite frankly.
I just took to actually putting in the subject line, "This is my last attempt to contact you." And that always got it.
Yeah.
That's great.
I like.
That is a great tip on that kind of thing. Anyway, got to run. So next week I don't have the topic worked out yet, but 2 weeks from now we're doing scary bookkeeping stories. So come on back.
Let's
Join
do
us.
privacy settings.
I got
next
a
week.
scary story.
Email me, Gina, a little bit more information on what you have in mind there. It sounds interesting, but I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, okay. What are the privacy settings on Facebook versus Google versus?
Got it.
How do
Okay.
you make sure things are private versus public?
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. We can do that next week. We'll just do internet privacy.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or
All
that
right.
lack of.
Yeah.
Well, I